All right. I'm not gonna hold y'all too long, so I'm gonna start now. As always, want to start with a lesson every time we can, and there's a lesson to be learned. That being said, let's talk about why we had that fall off in the market, right? While we had that nice little pop and then a crazy drop to end us out. So we get all this news about, possibility of not cutting rates in December, not getting October data, and a bunch of other negative stuff on our side, right? But I need you to pay attention to some things. It's not always what happens in the US that causes the US stock market to fall or have any volatility, right? So that being said, I want to explain, right, the type of effect that the Japanese yen has on a lot of markets, not just the US market, but our market specifically too. All right, so here's what actually happened. Japan, right, a while ago right, allowed their rates to go down to below 1% right? So at that point, people were basically borrowing money, right, in the Japanese yen for under 1% interest, right? Basically 0.8, 0.5, virtually no interest at all. So just borrowing money for a very small interest return rate. What they did with that money was they took that money and basically turned it, right? They use that money to basically turn it into US assets, right? That generate a higher return, right? So they basically took a lot of money for a low cost to put it into something in the US that can get a high return. And they were basically paying Japan back at virtually nothing, right, on the interest rate side. Cool. Everybody's working out. Japan's getting their economy back up, right? Japan's getting a lot of people interested in borrowing the yen to turn it into USD or other forms of money to basically get a higher return on another side. And in return, Japan's getting a little bit of interest injected into their economy as well. Well, if you look at the past, right? Anytime Japan decides to strengthen their yen and raise their rate, right? The US stock market will take a sell off. Now, what's important to understand is not necessarily what happens, but what can happen, right? So basically, when the yen strengthens, when the Japan strengthens the yen, right, we sell off because now we have to basically utilize their money at a higher interest rate, and we don't want to do that. Or people who utilize the yen to buy U.S. assets don't want to do that, right? So they'll sell off, right? So that way they're not paying so much back, or they'll cover, basically sell off, turn that into cash, get some of that money back, and things like that to kind of basically offset the yen becoming stronger, right? The yen becoming stronger has a ripple effect that causes other markets to basically sell off because of what they're doing. So that's basically what happened with Japan, right? There was an issue in their economy, right? Their yen has to go up, they have to strengthen it, and we see that as not good. So we have to sell a lot of these assets, right? Hence SoftBank. SoftBank is a Japanese based company, right? They sold off all that Nvidia, okay? Because again, there's issues with their main economy that they're working in, and so they got to basically sell that and turn it to cash. Excuse me. So knowing this, I want you to basically see the future of what can happen, right? Once we know what happens, we can kind of see the future of what can happen. So, boom, all in all, the yen being low, right, losing strength is good. That can cause the market to go up because people will borrow yen and basically inject that into other currencies and other assets that can actually provide a higher return. Good. When the yen strengthens, or when Japan strengthens the yen, right? There's a ripple effect. There's a lot of volatility that goes into the market, causing a sell off, right? And I believe that's exactly what happened, right? We know rate cuts. We already talked about. We were already hearing we weren't going to get October data and things like that. You got to understand these things get priced in the moment the news comes out, right? Which is why we do the buy the news. My bad. Moment the rumor comes out, which we do the buy the rumor and then sell the news. So if we're already pricing stuff in once we hear about it, when it actually happens, we're not going to get that big of a reaction as to when the initial conversation actually started. So what I believe caused that sell off was actually the issues with the yen, Japan strengthening the yen. So we that in return, right, we had to have that sell off. Now, news came out that Japan is also looking to inject 155 billion stimulus into their economy, most likely for, or they said mostly to be used for the housing market and things like that. All right. So check this out. When you inject 155 billion right into the Japanese economy, into the yen, what does that do? That strengthens the yen. So they're requesting approval, right? They're basically trying to get approval from their government or whatever to go ahead and do that and approve that to happen. When that injection happens, right, that's going to strengthen the yen. So what do you think happened off of that news? They tried to get ahead of that. They tried to already get all of this, sell off all of that all of the borrowed money, right? They tried to get sell off all that borrowed money so they're not having to pay back at a higher rate. So this is the initial reaction, right, to the news, to the economy situation in Japan wanting to inject $155 billion stimulus into the economy. That's the initial reaction. That sell off. Now, once it happens, there's a strong chance you'll get another mini sell off, right? So kind of be careful, kind of keep your eyes on the Japanese yen and what they're going to do and when they're going to do it, because that will have a strong effect on the US market. That will definitely cause some volatility in the US market. So we had the initial sell off due to Japan already wanting to strengthen their yen and going for approval to do so and inject 155 billion. Now, once that 155 billion is injected, that definitely will strengthen the yen, right? Raising it up a little bit. And you could possibly see another mini sell off, right? Remember, we already had the conversation. So that's everybody getting ahead of the issue. Now, when it actually happens, we can still have another sell off, but I don't imagine it'll be as big as what happened on last week. All right, so again, just I want you to always understand what's going on, and it's not always the U.S. issues that's causing the U.S. stock market to go down. Okay, we've already been talking about rate cuts in October, no data, and things like that. So that's not really what did it. That's the stuff that we see. That's the surface level information, right? But what really happened, not even behind the scenes, but that people like us don't actually pay attention to, is the effect the Japanese yen has on the rest of the market. Okay, that's the lesson. Let's take a look at the economic calendar now. Let me see. Boom. All right. So look at that. Monday, right? Monday. There is no economic news scheduled. Not to say there's nothing that can happen in the economy. Not to say we can't get a Trump tweet. So we're always going to be cautious in that aspect. But Monday, right, should be your trade your plan day. Monday, you should come out shooting. What I mean by shooting is follow your plan, stick to your plan, look for your setups, and trade those setups. All right. If there's nothing going on, all right, no continued issues from last week and no new news that can shake the market on Monday, stick to your plan and feel comfortable trading the way you trade. All right, now, just like last week, we're still in a day trade scalping stock market, right? I wouldn't say we're in that much of a swing trade stock market. And I say that because if you're going to go long on a stock, you have to understand, right? The stock market is currently in a downward moving trend at the moment. Okay, so that means the stock market can pop up and come right back down and come down even lower. All right, so until we see, like we talked about, the break of that negative structure, until we see the break of that bearish structure showing us more bullish structure now, right? Until we see that, downtrend is what we're currently looking at. Therefore, day trading and scalping, because you can get in, follow your trend, follow your setups, get some money for the day and get out. You're not sitting there swing trading it to where tomorrow the market can get volatile, drop some more or go reckless. Now, that doesn't take away from long terms, right? Because a lot of times if we're long, we're adding a lot of time on our options. We're adding far out expiration dates on our options, and most of the time we're buying shares. All right. When I speak on going long on a stock and like the future of a stock, I talk about 5 years from now a lot. I talk about when the company becomes fully profitable. I talk about things that will happen in the future, right? We don't have set dates on these things. So if you have the capital, shares are always a safer bet when trying to hold long. Remember that. But if you can afford the options, right? And we're looking at a stock for the future and we're trying to go long as far as investments go, right? Long-term investments. You need to basically buy leaps, a year or more in those option expirations. So that's what I'm saying. This currently, I'm not looking to call this market a swing traders market just yet because the market's pretty volatile. The trend currently is down, but it likes to pop up and then, midday drop again. Okay, so it basically goes both ways every day. So again, I'm not calling the swing traders market, but we are looking for scalps in day trades. Okay, those are still goes because when we scalp and we day trade, we trade either direction. We trade whichever direction we have to trade to make that money. Long-term trades, right? The market again, we haven't had this crazy 20% sell-off, right? We were, I think if it falls any lower to a certain point I'll go over, we're looking at a 7 almost 8% sell-off. Again, still not scary territory if you know what you're doing. So you can still have faith in long-term, right? Long-term holds in these strong companies for the bounce back. But if you're buying contracts that expire next week because you're trying to swing trade, or you're buying contracts that expire in like 15 days because you're trying to swing trade, that's where it becomes dangerous to swing trade because you might need a little more time than that for it to actually play out. You see what I'm saying? That's why I'm not calling it a swing trade market right now. We're currently looking at scalping, right? And day trades. Same plan as last week. Longs, your long-term investments, they're still good, they're still on the table. Remember, if you're starting out, look for those bottoms to come in, then you start small in case it comes down lower and you can add more in DCA. Okay. But again, Monday should be one of those trade your plan days. If there's no news that we're gonna be waiting on, the market's gonna do what it do. All right, look for your those day trades, those scalps, make your money and get out. Tuesday, we do have core PPI, PPI year over year, US retail sales, consumer confidence, pending home sales. There's a lot of data coming out Tuesday from 8:30 to 10 a.m. So stay cautious on that day, but understand, right? In the pre-market, you should already kind of see the direction the market's going because you're already going to get this data coming out in the news. That's why I keep telling you, wake up before market opens and watch the news. Watch for this data. Look at the pre-market and see how the market is moving. Okay. After 10 a.m., that's all the data for the day. The market should be taking the direction it's going to take for that day. Keep in mind patterns, right? We look for patterns. So, based on last week, right, you can get a dip, then you'll get a rip, and you'll probably get a sell off by end of day. All right. Until that pattern changes, be cautious this week for that same situation. If it's dipping, let it dip. Look for that rebound or that reversal to come into play on these stronger stocks, right? And maybe watch where it kind of bottoms out and has that support and maybe enter there for a small run up, a scalp or a day trade on it. Okay. But be careful holding these stocks all day based on last week's movement. So we're going to see what this week's gives us based on Monday. Wednesday, initial jobless claims, durable goods. Again, this is all mid-level data. All right, nothing that's too crazy. Keep in mind Thanksgiving, right? It's a holiday, so there is going to be no trading. Market will be closed on Thanksgiving. Friday will be a half day, right? Friday will be a half day. You might want to just go ahead and hang out on Friday with the fam if you're still there, or just enjoy your day after a great Thanksgiving, okay? But Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, we are going to make this money, okay? Just stay aware of the situation. Understand what happened last week wasn't US issues like we think it was. The Japanese yen, I want you to look it up and see how much of an effect it has and how much it plays into the bond and yields market. Okay, but again, Monday should be a great day to trade as long as nothing negative happens. Tuesday, stay cautious, but after 10 a.m., you'll kind of get that direction that you need to kind of go with. And Wednesday, another day you could possibly trade to be perfectly fine because again, all this data is 8:30 a.m. From there, right, the market opens at 9:30 Eastern time. Right. That being said, you already have a direction. Market should trade how it trades. Fear and greed meter, as of last week, we're in extreme fear, right? What do I tell you? When you're in extreme fear, you need to be buying strong companies or at least making small entries and starters into these companies, right? Because if you look overnight, right, overnight, a lot of these companies are bouncing $4 now. They're up $4 overnight. Palantir is up $4.13, right? It closed 154 on Friday. It is now at 158.98, about to be 159. Let's look at Nvidia. And again, I'm not showing it on TradingView because TradingView doesn't give us overnight unless somebody knows something I don't know. Look, Tesla's up $8.41, right? Tesla closed 391 on Friday. It is now at 399.50 overnight. Nvidia's up 235, nothing crazy, right? Nothing crazy at all. I wouldn't really get, too wet over 235. It closed at 178.88. It's at 181.20. But pay attention. I will show you that level. Remember that 180, 181 level on Nvidia is very big, very important. Okay, we'll go over that too. Hood is $3.54 overnight, so almost $4 overnight, right? It closed at 107 and it closed positive, I believe, at 107. It closed green on Friday and continues to move overnight to 110.88. So, right, things like that. When you're in extreme fear, you need to basically start at least looking at positions on these stocks, looking where the supports are and trying to start there. Now, I'm not saying we're about to rally from here, right? I'm not saying that at all. But had you started buying in the extreme fear Friday, right? Monday might have started looking good for you. That's all I'm saying. All right, let's go over some things. SPY in general, where are we at? Where are we at? Right? Where can we go and how are we going to trade this? So if I'm just looking at the naked chart itself, right? We've talked about these levels down here, right? We've talked about these levels. We're watching that 650. If we do happen, right? Because again, this green candle is still within this red candle. So it's still not a bullish look on the daily, right? It still can come down. Let's take a look at the weekly. Weekly continues to come down. All red candles, a nice touch and bounce off the 20, right? That 650.58, right? And buyers are stepping in. But again, we got a wick here and a wick here. So seller stepped in and buyer stepped in. So we need to see what tomorrow gives us. But we're going to stick to the daily. That being said, if we do, this will be our next level right here. So if we lose, right? If we lose 651.89, so basically if we lose 652, and write this down if you want to make a trade. If we lose 652, look for a scout back to 650 on SPY for puts. This is for puts, right? If you know how to play puts, play them. If you know how to short a stock, short a stock. If you don't have a margin account, I guarantee you're not gonna be able to short the stock. But in terms of puts or shorting, right? This is how you make money. If we lose 652, look for it to go back and test that 650 to the downside. If we lose that 650, right? Then you basically were on the market to go into 640, 641, 642. The first price target below 650 will be 646. All right. Honestly, yeah, 646. Now, why are we looking at the 646 area? Because this was a previous resistance, right? Came down, came up, resisted again, came back down, and finally broke up above it. But guess what? It pushed it back down. That was three touches. Then it finally broke out of that resistance. This is a strong zone to watch, right? And these strong levels and strong zones are ideally where the stock will go back to when it hits that area where there's not much to go off of. So if it basically breaking one previous level, right? See how it made this support and bounced all the way up, came back down to this support and started to hold, right? Started to hold. This is a strong support level. Once you break that support level, you're looking for another strong level. The next strong level down wasn't nowhere in here. It was the multiple touches of this same zone right here. Okay, so below 650, I'm looking for 646. Between 646, 47, you can take your profit anywhere in there on the way down if you're in puts or shorting the stock on SPY. Okay. Now, if we're coming up, right? If SPY wants to take us back up, right? All I'm gonna do, let me see. Let me look what SPY is overnight. 663. Yep, perfect. So if we revisit Friday's high, right? We break Friday's high, which should also bring us above this 10 EMA, which we like to look at, right? Breaking above this Friday high of 664.55, right? Above that, we're looking at 665.61. Modest, right? Modestly. We're looking for the actual touch of the 10 EMA. So if we get above 664.55, we're looking for 665.61, which is where my 10 EMA is, right? It's a small space, but that's good for a SPY scalp. You don't need the big gains all the time, right? If you get small gains every day, they compound, they add up. But if we do happen to break both the high and that 10 EMA tomorrow, right? We're looking at a 669, which would be the touch of the 20 EMA. Not only is it touch of the 20 EMA, that's, let's see, Friday, Thursday, Wednesday, Tuesday. That would actually be Monday's open. All right. These are all important things to pay attention to, right? When you revisit previous highs, right? Previous days' highs and things like that, those are signs you got to watch out for. Okay. So write that down. Here's our bullish trade right here. If we get above the high of 664.55, we're looking to take that to 665.61, right? Our next price target, if we get above 665.61, we're looking at 669. All right, 670 is a level to watch, but again, anything above that, it's I'm not worried about. You can stay in, raise your stop loss, all of that. Okay. Now, what makes us bullish on the market is if not only do we get above Friday's high, but we could take out this red candle from Thursday where that big drop happened. Once we can see the buyers come in and take over this red candle and get us above that 675.56, ultimately getting us above 656 or 676, right? Then we're moving into bullish territory. Then the momentum is to the upside. All right. Now, if you draw trend lines, and look, I'll erase, remove all 13 drawings, right? Remember, we draw trend lines. If you draw trend lines, oh, close enough. 685 would be great because that is our breakout of the trend line. All right, that is our break of the trend line. But this isn't bad. Breaking Thursday's high of 675.56 will probably put us in the running to at least come up and try to touch this trend line. All right, and either we reject off of it or we break through it. That's why we draw those. Because if this gets above this red candle, it's probably going to at least try to break through this trend line. And this kind of lets you know where you're at in the trade. All right. But that's SPY. I'm using SPY as an indicator, but I know people like to use SPY as a trade. So that's definitely, I'll gladly map it out for you every time. But those are our levels on SPY. Let's look at, I did not put the damn earnings. I didn't put earnings on here. But that's an easy fix. Give me 2 seconds. Mm-mm-mm-mm. I'm almost there. Put in the chat right now. Well, in the earnings channel. Then I'll pull it up. All right, that's in there. So feel free to review this later if you want to. It's in the earnings channel now. I will bring it and put it here. All right, there we go. Now, earnings, right? Monday after close, Zoom is one of those big market cap companies you want to take a look at. Let's see, I'll pull it up here to see where we're at on Zoom. You know, it's crazy. I think Zoom used to be like a $400 stock a couple years ago. That's the crazy part. But let me double check though. Yeah, 490. I remember this trade too. I was in somebody else's Discord. This trader called Legacy. He was like he had a crystal ball. That boy could see the future. If he said hop in something, you hopped in. But I remember this. Yup. This bad boy ran 2020 just all the way up. It was crazy. But yeah, so it was a $400 stock. Now this bad boy dropped as low as $47.50. I'll be honest, I'm not really too bullish on Zoom right now. Zoom is still a great platform. Zoom is still a great app, still something great to use. But there's so much other AI um based companies and things that does what Zoom does. Zoom is still, Zoom is still that guy, in lack of a better word. But I haven't been following it or really caring to trade it. I mean, it's been down this whole time. But again, stocks at these levels, right? Stocks at these levels, when they do good, and Zoom, as you see, it beats. Zoom has beat earnings every time, right? Every time. It beat here, dropped, beat here, dropped, beat here, started to go up. So maybe if it beats again, which theoretically, right, it should, if the beat is big enough, this is actually a perfect time to fake everybody out and send it up higher while nobody's thinking about it, right? Which are the best times to buy stocks when nobody's thinking about them, but when they're still good companies. But let's look at Zoom's finances. Ooh, finance. I'll come back. Communication, financials. Let's see. 49, 43, 45, 46, 47. So yeah, I mean, again, it's the growth hasn't been crazy, but it's constantly growing. Cost of revenue. It hasn't really gone, it hasn't gotten too bad. Gross profit is up. Overall, Zoom's financials are great in terms of stability, right? These it has positive financials, but again, right? Remember we talked about last week. It's the growth factor that matters, right? Investors want to see the ability for growth, how much growth you produce. And so if you're still growing, that's great. But if your growth rate is coming down, that basically takes away from my sentiment about the company's ability to turn a solid profit. So again, as you look at the total revenue, it's going up, but not by much. So this is Zoom is a safe company model, right? But this growth doesn't show much innovation or competition with its peers and these other companies. So I really can't tell you how I feel about Zoom for earnings. I just have speculation or maybe even, conspiracy theories about just at these levels, if it's still a good company, perfect time to hit the okie doke on everybody and shoot it up. But again, I will watch out for Zoom for more volatility though, right? For some volatility coming into this week. Oh, let's get it. Alibaba is another company to watch. Let's see. Baba financials, growing revenue. Other income expenses are negative, but it's not enough to really kill it. Cost of revenue 5.8. That's that gross profit isn't too bad. That gross profit is not bad at all. But there's one. What I'm looking for. Where's it at? EPS 55.63. The APS has been nice. Let's see how it's been doing. We'll go here about. Oh, I like this. I'm not gonna lie. I like Baba. If we're looking at structure, right? If you're looking at the structure of a stock, remember we go over this all the time. We've had that accumulation phase along here, comes up, comes down, comes up, comes down, comes up, right? And now the down's not getting any lower. The bottom is getting higher while it's still beating at the door, right? The low is at a higher low, and we're still beating at that door until we finally break out. 122 got up to 148, right? Came down because right stocks definitely they come up and they test that roof before they get on it and stay on it. They test that roof. This resistance can it be a support, right? But what happened was it utilized this 200 EMA as its support level, and it made another higher low. So we have a high, right, and a low. We have a higher high and we have a higher low, right? Starts to come around, it stays moving with the 200 EMA, and then boom, right here. So now looking at the previous high, right, which is this, Baba came down and held that level. Mm. Not only is it showing bullish momentum, right? Our MACDs and RSIs are resetting while it's still bullish, while it's still moving up, we're resetting. Ideally, once we get that green cross, that cross up on the MACD, RSI starts to come out of that oversold and crosses that signal line, that white signal line, taking us over here in this direction, right? Once we get those signals to hop in, you can see Baba go all the way back up to this high and higher. So Baba to $200 plus if this trend holds and if this MACD and RSI can cross these lines and stay moving up. But I kind of like where Baba's at. I would definitely watch Baba for earnings. I would also watch Alibaba for volume coming into the week. So we're definitely keeping our eyes on Baba. It'll definitely be on my charts tomorrow. If you have time, I would kind of search China, see what's going on with their economy right now, see if there's any negatives or positives coming up around this week. Because again, Baba is a China-based company, right? That Americans love to trade at the right time, but again, it's a China-based company, so the Chinese economy can affect Baba. So yeah, but I actually like Baba. Overall, I like Baba right now. As far as earnings, I'm just going to watch it for maybe some volume to trade it during the week, and then based on how we do for earnings, excuse me, I might even start a position on this bad boy. But again, remember structure, right? Structure. You're looking at those resistance levels. When it hits a resistance, comes down, hits it again, comes lower, right? That's not the sign you're looking for. The sign you're looking for is when it hits it again and we're finally starting to come higher. And even if we don't come higher, when we're starting to hit equal lows at the bottom, right? Equal lows or higher lows while still hitting an equal resistance level. That's how you found your range and your accumulation area. Now, this is a big accumulation area, 65 to 122, right? But it was readable. And we know even if you never touched it here, this breakout is going to mean something. And it did. It broke out. And when it broke out, it ran from 122 to 150. Came down and kept riding the 200 as it's curling up. Okay. I'm telling you, utilize your EMAs. Those are your moving levels, right? Those are your moving levels. You have set levels, right? But then when you're in a trade, these EMAs are your moving levels. But I kind of like where it's starting off. If it can hold this level, if it can hold this past resistance and current support, if it can hold this isn't a bad area to start a small entry if we see some bullish movement tomorrow for at least a scalp or a day trade. But it definitely needs to get back above that 10 EMA. Definitely needs to get back above that 158.24. Um, let's say, right, and this is just me chatting. If I do try to take a position on Baba, just know, right, the bottom of this candle right here is your stop loss. The wick, which was about 148. Well, nah, stop guessing. Let's look at the candle. The low was 148.64, right? So the bottom of that candle will be your stop loss if you entered here Friday, or if we're bullish tomorrow and entering again, right? We enter tomorrow and it's going up. Your stop loss is the bottom of this candle right here that held the level for us. That is my indicating candle. What is Baba overnight? It's up $5.59. What did I tell you? It needs to get up over that 158.24, which is at 10 EMA. It's above that 158.52 right now, right? We know where stocks are going. That's not an issue. We know where stocks are going. The issue is how to play it, right? Because we already knew to look for that 158 level because that's our 10 EMA. So let's say it holds that level tomorrow. Let's say it doesn't move at all. We hold that 158.52 tomorrow and it starts moving up. I'll probably look at mm, where did we open? We opened at 159. So tomorrow, since we're already in the 158s, above 159, I would take that trade right to the call side to 161.39. I would take that open simply to the high for a scalp or a quick day trade on Baba. I would take that 159 exactly, right? I love how it's a whole number. The open was 159 exactly. Above that, I would try to take that as close to 168.39 is my price target. Above that, then we got motion, right? Above that, we got motion because those levels right there, let me see, 162, right? These levels right here are a level to watch, right? It came down and bounced off that same level. The bottom of the low of this was 163.58. The high of this one 62.62. So in that zone, right above that zone where this support happened, right, and where this resistance started to form, right, we start getting that bullish momentum, right, to this next level right here, this next high. Shit, hold on. And again, we're just chatting, right? We're just looking for levels on this next high of 170.55. And we stay modest, right? I look for 170 exactly. I'm not even looking for that extra 55 cents. But there's some movement there. But again, right? Is Baba and has earnings this week, so be careful as far as staying in the stock. But if you're day trading, an easy day trade would be this one right here. Above that 159, we'll look for 161.39. Above that 161.39, we're moving to that 162, and above that, it could take us, right? It could take us somewhere to the 164s, 165s. So ultimately, look for that 170. But I only show Baba to show. I like where it's at as far as bullish momentum goes and its ability to go higher. I like where my indicators are looking to kind of reset for another move up. I like its financials. So let's just see how earnings does. But definitely put Baba on your radar. Let's look at another one. Dell, right? Definitely watch Dell. Coles, right? Based on how the other ones did, I don't care about Coles. I'm not watching Coles. Now Coles can give you, a small little dollar move, $2 move if it does good or bad, both ways. But I'm watching Baba on Tuesday. I'm watching Dale after close. So let's look at Dale. So overall structure, right? Let's take a look at it. God, it's just been a mover. Easy day. I do kind of like where we're at. And here's why. We have a shoulder. We have a head. And we could possibly have the start of another shoulder for an inverse head and shoulders. Even if it comes down lower, right? Even if it comes down lower. I'm not saying get in now, right? Because it can come down lower. But even if it comes down lower, wherever you start to see that reversal happen and then the play turn bullish on this shoulder right here, if it does, right, then that could take us to the next set of highs. But if this play does basically rebound and bounce from here, and we get above this 200 EMA, so this 10 does not cross below it, it starts to bounce off it, and the candle starts to close above it. So basically above 127.31, basically above 128. All right. Dell above 128 could be the start of an upward trend from an inverse head and shoulders. And I'll give you the visual, which I'm sure most of you already know what that visual is, but just in case, right? Boom, coming up like that. Now, if you're being cautious about it, you're going to miss out on a lot of money, right? But ultimately, not even there. It's here. The break of this neckline right here, that 148 area, basically 149 ish, right? Wherever this one was, the high of 140. So 148, right? Break of that 148 starts giving you that look that you want for an entry to go higher. All right. 148 to 168 would be your perfect play. That now this is forward thinking, right? Long term looking, right? If you were to keep this on your radar and keep watching it for the next few weeks, right? And we're just the market goes bullish, Dale starts going bullish, right? You have your inverse head and shoulders here, and if this starts breaking positive, I would possibly take an entry, right? With my no shit bottom being that one, the bottom of this candle, 116.57. So I would watch Dell. I would definitely watch Dell for volume, right? For trading. And I would definitely pay attention to Dell and how earnings goes in the report and what the CEOs, CFOs talk about for the future of Dell. Because Dell could be your next banger, right? Dell did all this, it shot up, right? It moved from November of 2022, right? It said, hey, we're about to go higher. Now it had some drops, right? But ultimately, again, you have these ranges. It stayed above here, right? Once it broke out of this level here, this is where it played. Now I'm not saying, not come on, we all know we're not going to be in this the whole time. This isn't somewhere you want to trade in, but just know that breakout can be crazy. That once it finally gets above that 181 on Dale, you're looking at 200 plus. You're looking at this rally right here all over again. Because as you see, it's accumulating down here, right? Boom, boom. But now we're getting higher. See this high, you see this low, you see this higher high, you see this higher low. So we're looking for the next higher high, right? Once we get that structure change confirmation, Dell could be that next mover into 200 plus. So I would definitely start keeping Dell on the radar, doing my research if earnings is positive. All right, but Dell could be that mover though. Again, I'm not looking at Dell for no day trades for real, but I'm looking at Dell because I like the pattern that's forming. I like where it's at. Let's look at financials if we can. 101, 102, 88, 95, back to 101. So basically, we're looking at Dell in 2022 right now. We're at 2022 Dell, but the year's not over, right? The year's not over. So by quarter one, right, 2026, Dell can prove to be crazy profitable. Quarter one could be a crazy profitable quarter, and Dell can finally have that continued growth. Now, Dell's growing, right? But if you look, Dell was actually dropping in growth. It went from 101, 102, but from there you saw a decline to 88. Now it's working its way back up to 95, 101. So everybody here, right, thinking Dale was about to be that thing and do good, they're looking for Dale to finally get above these numbers. So these same people who were hopeful on Dale off of these financials are going to be waiting for Dale to beat these financials to continue being hopeful on Dale. So these finances aren't bad. It's growing. It's getting back to where it was. Once we get back to where it was with Dale, we need to be looking for Dale to surpass where it was and show us a reason to finally say, "Hey, Dale's that company again." So with this, it's going to take Dale partnerships. It's going to take, innovation from Dale, and it's going to take production. So just keep your eyes on Dale and look for those things to happen. You might actually see a $200+ stock. From where it's at. It would be crazy. That would be crazy growth. So Dale should be on your radar. Baba should be on your radar for earnings this week, for volume, but also for the future. These are actually pretty good setups from where it's at if things can go good. That's all I'm really, yeah. So Zoom, Baba, Dell for this week as far as earnings volume and possible look into future plays and future growth for the long term. But that's really all I have for y'all tonight, right? Was just give you, as always, another lesson. So understand how foreign currencies and foreign, countries actually affect the US. I truly believe that what happened last week was based off of the yen more than it was based off of these rate cuts. That it actually, if you think about it right now, the rate cuts are now back on the table for December. Right? The probability for rate cuts are now back to being high for December. We already knew October data wasn't coming. Let's be real. So yeah, Monday, let's have a hell of a trade. I do want to go ahead and plug the live trade we did last week. The way, bro. So I think I still have it up. Do I? Yes. I think I do. No, I don't. Oh, I do right here. So remember, we talked about the 15-minute trade technique, basically ORB trading. You set you wait 15 minutes in the market, right? At that 15-minute mark, you map out that 15-minute candle. And from there, you basically put a top line and a bottom line. Whatever line gets broken is the line you take, right? That's the trade you take. At the same time, when the let's say how we broke out of this upper level, when it comes back down, you could also take that direction because now this breakout failed. It's below that 15-minute top, right? And boom, came down. Took those puts, hopped in those puts. Not only were those puts played, but it broke below the lower line and kept going lower. So remember, and I'll actually post the live trade. I recorded the live trade. I'll post the live trade. But I even said, I said it's Tesla's still coming down. We just gotta wait for it to break this line. And you should have been in puts that whole day eating. So, and again, I'll do more live trading with the screens up and everything. Again, I just have to have more time to do so. So, yeah, just keep your eyes open for that. I do want to do more live trading with you guys 'cause I know it'll be a little more beneficial for you to actually see the trade play out. But other than that, I do appreciate you guys for continuing to be part of the family and spending your time on these Sundays with me. Any questions so far? All right, any input? All right, you know the drill. I'll be in the chat, or on Discord for the next hour. If you have any questions, you want to hit my DMs or whatnot. Outside of that, appreciate you for coming. See you tomorrow morning.